for many of us, our cars have become a super important part of our lives. It's how we go back and forth to work. It's how we run our kids to their various events. It's our transportation. But for many of us, it's a lot more than just transportation. It's also a signal, a societal signal to who we are, kind of like the clothes that we wear, signal who we are and how we want people to perceive us. And for many of us, we're also using our cars for that signal, but unfortunately, it's a super expensive signal, and the debt is starting to cause problems for individuals. I don't want to see that happen to you. I think there's a better way, so let's jump into the problem. And as a financial advisor for over 20 years, I've talked to hundreds of clients about this. For those that it's a match for, what the strategy I'm going to share with you today has been a game changer for them, and for some folks have allowed them to retire 3 years earlier, 5 years earlier, or even more. So let's jump in. According to the Wall Street Journal, the amount of money that Americans owe on their cars has now exceeded how much we owe on our student loans. For most American families, if car loans are not the number one expense, they're number 2 or 3. It's a major and important expense in the United States. This chart here from Kelley Blue Book shows what the average new car price is. And you can see the new car price before the pandemic went from just under $40,000 to now just under $50,000. That's a 25% increase. And for most of us, 85% of people are buying a new car with a loan. And the problem with that is, and I should say, a little over half buy used cars with a loan. And the problem with that is car loans are expensive. This report here by Bank Rate Research shows what the car loan rates are, the interest rates, based on your credit score. And you can see even for people with the best credit, they're paying more than 10% a year for their car loan. So we have a big balance, right? We're financing something that costs $50,000 on average, and we're paying a high interest rate, over 10%, even if you have the best credit. So what that ends up resulting in is expensive car loans. As I write this here, according to this article, the average car loan is just under $750 a month. That's a big payment. $738 is the average payment for a new car, and $530 is the average payment for a used car. And believe it or not, almost 20% of all new car loans have payments of over $1,000 a month. That's $12,000 a year. You know, if you're making $48,000 a year, that is 25% of your before tax salary, right? So if you're making a fourth more than that, $60,000, you can see it's still 20%. It's a huge chunk of your before you even pay taxes salary. And as I said, it's expensive debt, and it's also in aggregate a huge number. You can see the challenge is getting bigger. In 2020, Americans owed $1.25 trillion in debt. That has gone up to $1.5 trillion just for car loans. The average auto loan balance, you can see here, is $24,000. And then the average auto loan balance by FICO score, you can see even people with poor credit, which typically means they're lower income, you know, is right around $20,000. I find it interesting that it actually goes down as your credit score goes down. I find it interesting, but not surprising. And I think the reason for that is the people that have these higher credit scores, they're making these trade-offs and they're saying, you know what, maybe I don't want as much car, which is one of the main points that I have here, is I think we're buying too much car. So stay with me, just a couple more facts I want to share with you, and then we'll jump into this. So, you know, the part of the challenge is once you're in this new car cycle or the car payment cycle, for many Americans, it just never ends. You know, they go from one car loan to the next car loan, and you buy your car down the street from the dealership, whether it's new or used. You drive it 3, 4, 5 years, and you get a phone call from the car salesman saying, hey, I can get you a great trade-in for your existing car. Come on in, let me tell you how much I can get you for your trade-in. And it's appealing, right? I mean, it's okay, I can sell this car for more than I thought it was worth. And I need to eventually buy a different car anyways. So they get you to come in, and then they talk you into buying another car and buying more of a car that you can afford. So how do I know this? As I said, I've been a financial advisor now for over 20 years, and I've helped hundreds of families prepare for, which really means save money and invest wisely, and also some of the mental challenges that comes for preparing for retirement. But I've helped hundreds of families do this. And the ones that this clicks for, getting rid of the car payment can have a significant impact on your life. It's the difference between maybe retiring at 50 and retiring at 60 or 65. Okay, again, so I'm a financial advisor, but the other way I know this is not only do I do YouTube videos, but I watch a lot of YouTube videos. And I want to introduce you to a guy by the name of Andy Elliott. I'm actually a big fan of Andy's. He's a very motivational person. Like when I'm ready to go for a run, believe it or not, sometimes I'll watch this guy's videos because he's just come from nothing and he works hard and he's very motivational. Now, his target audience, where he's chosen to exercise his skills, is helping salespeople. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's great to help salespeople. But one of his target markets is car salespeople. So I hear him talk about all the tricks that they use to get us to trade in our car, to get a new car, to accept a payment that's higher than what we probably should, and to make it feel like it's a good idea, right? So oftentimes like a technique. Anyways, this is Andy's website if you ever get a chance to watch it. If you want to know the tricks of the trade, how the car salespeople talk you into taking on another car. If you've ever come home from a car dealership and say, how the heck did that happen? You know, I was just killing time on a Saturday afternoon and I came home with a $50,000 brand new car. If that's ever happened to you, watch Andy Elliott's station. Again, I'm a fan of Andy's, but these are very trained salespeople that are going to make it seem to you like your best financial decision is to buy this expensive car. I don't think that is your best financial decision. I think Americans are buying way more car than we should be. So how much do I think Americans should be buying? There's a rule of thumb in my industry, 25 to 35. And what that rule means is look at your annual salary, 1 year salary, your gross before taxes, and look at 25 to 35% of it. And that's the range that your upper end should be. It doesn't mean you can't spend less. I spend less, I always have. Even when I was making minimum wage, I spent less than that. But so, you know, if you're making $40,000 a year, 25% of that would be $10,000. 35% of that would be about $14,000. If you're making $60,000, that would be your budget for your next car would be $15,000 to $21,000. And you might be thinking, hey, Azul, I can't buy a new car for that. And you're right, unfortunately you can't, right? When we looked at the numbers earlier, the average new car now is selling for almost $50,000. But could you buy a car that's 4 or 5 years old? Could you buy a car that looks great, that's been well maintained for $15,000 to $20,000? I think you can. I mean, even if you're making $100,000, you're not buying the average car, right? That's $25,000 to $35,000. So somehow we as a society, at least here in America, have fallen into this trap where we're spending way too much money on a car. Now, I'm not telling you how much money you should spend. I'm just saying, as a financial advisor, if you want to be able to save a meaningful portion of your salary, if you want to be able to save for retirement, if you'd like to be able to retire before 65, for many people, this is the least sacrificial way to do it. You know, back when I was growing up, the rule of thumb was save 10% of what you make and you'll be fine. And that might have worked in our grandparents' era, where they had 3 legs to the retirement stool, right? They had Social Security, and Social Security wasn't taxed. They had the money that they saved, but many people also had a pension from work. You know, in our reality, for many of us, our Social Security is going to be taxed about 85% of it for many of my viewers. In addition, we're saving our money. But I think we need to save more money because most of us don't have that pension anymore. So we need to provide more of our retirement funds than many of our grandparents did. Now, my grandfather was a farmer, so he didn't get a pension either. But you know what? He was fortunate. He was able to sell the land, his farm, when he retired, and that's what paid for his retirement. But for that, his retirement plan was not a 401k. His retirement plan was not an IRA. My grandfather's retirement plan was a four-letter word, KIDS. It was going to be my mom and her three sisters that were going to support their mom and dad. And that's how it was done back then, right? Fortunately, now many of us have the opportunity to save more and to be independent and not have to rely on our kids. Okay, so I talked about that, that previous rule, the 25-35 rule, but here's the thing that can really move the needle for you. And here's what I want you to think about. Could you sacrifice for a couple years and buy this used car? And instead of making a $750 payment that's going to some bank or some finance organization, pay cash for your next car, whatever you could afford, even if it's $10,000 or $15,000. I'm telling you, I have bought personally used cars my whole life, and for $20,000, you can buy a car that presents itself well, that has been taken care of. Could you do that once? I'm not saying do that the rest of your life. Could you do that once and take that $750 that you would have paid to the bank on your loan? You would have paid 10% interest on that. I showed you what the loan amounts were. Could you do that and pay yourself? So now let's look at this loan calculator that I found online at NerdWallet. And I want you to look, let's just say, I'm trying to get a $750 car payment. So you can see my monthly payment is $743.65. So to get that, I put in a car that's $35,000. The interest rate 10%, which is based on what I showed you earlier. I have a 5-year car loan. It's starting right away. In this case, I'm putting no money down. There's no trade-in. So it's just to see what would happen if you paid yourself $750 a month for the, what do we say, 60 months, so for 5 years at 10% interest. If you paid yourself that, you would have at the end of this almost $45,000, $44,619. So if you bought one used car and set aside that money every month, so you buy one used car, pay cash for it, and now you pay that $750 a month to yourself, now you're going to have enough maybe for your next car to pay cash. And then the car after that, and the car after that, right? You're still making that $750 a month payment, but you're making it to yourself. So that's a strategy that I think can help us break away from this cycle that I see is trapping, at least here in the United States, trapping so many people into these monthly car payments that makes it hard to save that 20% that I was talking about earlier, right? I mentioned 10% is not enough. My goal for you is 20%. And I know it's aspirational. I know it's hard to save 20%. But if we can get rid of the car loan, we've gone a long way towards that. And to save 20%, one of the ways to think about this is, could you look at your after-tax take-home pay, but before any contributions to a 401k? Could you look at your after-tax take-home pay and say, we're going to budget 50% of this on our needs. Our needs are our rent or our mortgage payment, our utility bill, gasoline for our car, insurance for our car, right? So all of your needs. And then could you, so 50% budget half of your after-tax pay, take-home pay for that. Could you then keep your wants, things like going out to dinner, going on a nice vacation, all the stuff that comes in the Amazon cardboard boxes? Could we keep that to 30% or less of our after-tax take-home pay? If you can do that, guess what's left? 20%. And that's the goal. So there's two ways to get there, the easy way and the hard way. The easy way is every time you get a raise, every time you get a promotion at work, I want you to set aside half of that for future self, and I want you to enjoy it. And I want you to set aside the other half for future self. So half for current self and half for future self. And if you do that over time, you should start approaching that 20% level. So that's the easy way. The hard way is, rip off the Band-Aid. It's kind of like reliving the early days of the pandemic, which is really just cut back to the bare minimums for 100 days and see how low you can get your wants to, right? Your needs are, you got to pay those anyway, so you likely don't have much control over that. But carve back for 100 days, see where you're at. It's almost like a detox, an over-purchasing detox, an overspending detox. So you really focus just on your needs for 100 days, 3 months. We can do anything for 100 days. So the first 2 weeks are easy. It's a challenge, right? And so you're 15% of the way done by then. By the end of the following week, you're almost 25% of the way done. We can do almost anything for 100 days. So go through this detox, understand what your wants and needs are, and get to 20%. I think a key to doing that is this car payment, getting this car payment as low as you can, or even better, eliminate it. So if you have found this helpful, I also do other videos about enjoying the journey, not just sacrificing. I've talked a lot today about sacrificing and not buying that fancy new car. But this video up here talks about 7 things that I want you to stop doing in your 50s in order to enjoy the journey more. It's not just about getting to that starting line, which is what I call retirement. Your starting line, not your finish line. But enjoy the whole journey. So I'll see you in that video. Thanks for watching this one. Bye-bye.